Okay, so start by popping a bit in your hand.
Soil or water?
Bit of soil, sorry.
Okay.
And you can just wet. I usually put a little bit on and then squeeze it together. And the idea is to get it to the consistency where it's sort of putty-like.
But not really soggy.
But not really soggy.
This is too wet. I'm
Yeah,
going to add a bit more soil.
I've done a blue Peter. I did one earlier.
Ah.
I like your style.
Which was just as well because it was really a mess.
Okay.
Okay, so it should be so your hand is like still clean and not like this where your hand is still dirty.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one not using the gloves.
Well, gloves are a very good idea, I have to say.
Sorry.
So if your hands got wet damp soil on it, you've maybe got a little bit too much, and you want it a little bit more, too much water. So add a bit more of your soil, and then it should come that it doesn't really stick so much to your hand.
I think I managed to get a little something here.
That's looking good.
Yeah,
I'm not touching the computer now.
Yeah, no, me neither. So I've been really cheeky and I've got 3 soil samples from different parts of my garden.
I think this is
I'll be really interested to see the difference between those. Okay, so the first step in the hand texturing is if you can roll it into a ball. So if you roll it in your palm, I'm not sure mine's gonna.
So this one's.
There looks to be some quite good
Yay!
soil balls there.
This one I can't. This is some of the pure sand that's washed up on top of my soil, and it sort of forms a ball, but as soon as I try to move it at all, it just breaks apart.
Yes, I've got the same issue. So I've got my soil ball here, but when I try and roll it, I thought it was going to fall apart, but actually, there we go.
When I try and roll it, it does that.
So what's a roly-poly?
So if you can't roll it into a ball,
like Naomi, you've got sand. Not structure at all. Okay, so the rest of us have all managed to get.
I only have one hand of it. Yeah, I think mine's pretty.
Just.
Yeah, I think it has a bit of sand, but it's mostly clay.
Okay, so then we can move on to the next step, which is if you can roll it in your hand, the width of your hand, to see if you can form a cylinder about the width. So I usually do it like that. And mine has just crumbled into a into a
crumble, but it stays.
So you've managed to roll a cylinder there.
Yep.
Sort of. It's got some big cracks in it.
Yeah, cracks per cylinder.
Okay.
Roots. Let's take those out. So if you can't roll it into a cylinder.
Yeah, so mine didn't roll into a cylinder at all, it's just fallen to bits. So that means it's a sandy loam. But if you have managed to roll it into a cylindered width for your hand, you can carry on. So if you continue rolling and see if you can extend the cylinder to around 14 centimeters in length.
14. Okay.
So do you still do it in the hand, or do you use now the surface?
I usually just roll it between my hands and see if it extends out.
If you only have one hand like I do, you can.
Yeah, you can do it on a surface like that. That works quite well.
Oh, it's falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart too. Like
I have some stones in there.
You need to take out the stones and the roots as well if you've got any in, before you.
I missed a couple.
I would say that.
I missed a couple.
Yeah, me too. I'm still pulling out little tiny roots.
Okay, so people who couldn't get to a cylinder 14 centimeters long have silty loams. Oh yes, Fiona looks like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good long
Yeah,
cylinder. Out on teasel as well. Ah,
I'm going to try
Yeah.
my
okay.
next one now.
Yeah, supposed to be clay soil, but it's doing well.
Okay. So on to the next step, which is if you can bend it into a U shape.
Oh yeah, look, I'm
Yeah,
doing this with a different one, and it's clay. It's so easy to roll out. You can just roll without
Oh.
thinking that it's gonna.
No,
Check
mine's
enough.
gone.
Ah, yep. So Fiona's has gone.
Yep.
So that means that yours is a low.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Hey!
Whoops.
So Teasel's made quite a good U shape there.
Yeah.
And Naomi as well, by the looks of things.
Yeah, it's getting there.
I'm trying again.
Ah, there we go. How's yours, Yanis?
I think
Yeah,
it's
it's-
picked up the sand off my hands actually.
I'm being more careful, so I try to keep the.
Have to
I
be
think
careful.
that's definitely past 40. So here we go.
That looks it. And you
Yeah.
can make it into the shape. Right,
So-
okay.
Some kind of a croissant. We can bake it now.
Okay, so those who haven't broken, continue curling it round and see if you can make a ring.
Ooh, not quite.
It's already cracking, of course.
Yeah, mine is cracking
So
as well. But
I can,
reckon-
but
Okay, so
definitely starts
Teasel's
cracking
making
there.
a ring, but it does look quite cracked. So if you can make
Yeah,
a
it's a
ring,
cracky ring.
if you can make a ring, but it's got cracks in the surface, that means you have a fine clay.
And if you can't make a ring,
And if you can't make a ring at all, that means you've got a clay loam. So I don't know, everyone's, so if you could make a ring but it was smooth without cracking, that would mean you have a heavy clay. So it doesn't look like any of us have got one of those, but I think we've all got
we've got a pretty good range.
good range, haven't we? Yeah.
Mm.
So if Fiona wins with the loam, well done. That's the best soil to have.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, everybody's jealous of me because they've all got heavy clay. Most of my friends.
Okay. So
Yeah, so
mine's
so
sandy
you've got
loam,
quite sandy, yeah.
which explains why my soil dries out so quickly. I think. Because I've got one of the moisture sensors that we're using in the the changing climate mission, and even after we've had a bit of rain, it's still showing below 20% moisture. So that obviously explains that.
Oh,
So,
we're down to about, I think, 13% moisture.
oh really? Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really dry here.
Oh, you still haven't had much rain then after.
No.
Gosh.
Yes, I know. If
I'm
you
still
don't water
trying to get
anything
it
here, it's hardly living.
Yes, we're just on the edge of the Peak District here, so we get plenty of rain.
Yeah,
That's a really good downpour. Perfect. So if you've got both sandy soil and really heavy clay soil, I'm sure you know, but the solutions to that from a growing food or gardening perspective are adding lots more organic matter, which you can add in many different forms. So you can do it with live plants growing. Let me turn myself back up. Oop. So you can use living green mulches. So things like Phacelia is one of my favourite ones because I like to leave a little bit of the flowers for the bees to have. But the idea of these is that you let them grow a little bit. So just as they start growing kind of about this sort of height, and then you dig them in, and that adds some good organic matter into the soil and gives the feeders that like to have the fairly fresh decaying stuff to break down. You can also add compost onto the top. So if you keep your household and garden waste and make compost with it, you can add that directly to the top of the soil for things to bring it down and dig it in, or you can dig it into the soil yourself. What else do people use? So we've got composting mulching. You can add a layer of organic material to the top of your soil as well, and that will also help. Victoria, for you, that might be a really good idea because it will help retain soil moisture in or at least sort of near where the roots are in your soil. surface. So as that gradually gets pulled in, you'll build up an organic layer, but it will also, by having a layer of matter across the top of your soil, you'll also stop evaporation. So although much of your soil moisture loss will be down through the ground, it's also more readily evaporated from sandy soils. So that can help too. Clay soils, yeah, lots and lots of compost and manure. And I think for these soils, it can actually be sometimes quite useful to dig it in, because that's a kind of a more rapid process. I've been experimenting with no dig this year, so I've been setting up. Last year I set up 3 vegetable beds just by laying sheets of cardboard on top of the grass instead of digging up all the turf for like tons and tons of grass roots. So I just put a couple of layers of cardboard down and then some wood chip and bits of things, mainly because I was chipping up the prunings from my garden.
Just
and
a
that's
quick question.
well. So I've done some more this year. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
I use a lot of cardboard as well, but I try to take all the labels and all the bits of plastic, but I don't know if you noticed any white bits that are left over from the cardboard after the earthworms and everything finished. And it just took me a while to understand what it was, and eventually I discovered it was the glue. So where the cardboard pieces are actually, they have a line of glue, so that sometimes I was just finding these chunks of plastic very, very thin, and I was like, what is it? Where is it coming from? And eventually it's where the cardboard is stuck together. So if you use cardboard, it's better just to open it all, just to get rid of the plastic before.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. Like, all the sellotape, any staples, but I never thought about the glue. That's a really
I didn't realise that
one.
I discovered it yesterday, so fresh.
It's usually such a small line where it's glued as well, isn't it?
Yes,
It'd actually be quite easy to cut that out or tear it off.
I just wonder when we're recycling cardboard whether plastic gets in at that stage as well, when they're
who knows?
Who knows? Yes. You can't. It's everywhere.
Definitely. Yes, probably get chucked or put together with the cardboard when they I don't know, when they get the cardboard wet and into a paste or whatever. Maybe they have like a sieve or something.
They can skim it off the top or something.
So I'm just wondering, like, you're obviously all good gardeners. If we could just have a quick go around and hear from everybody about like what they do to make their soil nice and easier to grow in. So, Janus, do you want to?
Should I go first?
Go first.
Okay. Well, I didn't got this. I think I started with this little one in 2016, and as you can see, it's pretty much covered with weeds and all sorts of things still growing and raised bed. And in the autumn now, close to us, we have the A12, and I go there and pick leaves and put leaves and then cardboard, or cardboard leaves and cardboard again. So I'm making layers and layers of ground cover where I can. And also when I can get the horse manure, I put the horse manure straight onto the ground and then cardboard. If you guys are curious, I can quickly take you on another bit. And next to the spinach monoculture plot, I've done that. So I've put about 1 bag of horse manure and just covered with cardboard, and it's been there, I would say, about a month now. So yeah, and also in the compost bins, I keep the horse manure for, I don't know, up to 5 months or 6, and keep turning. I try to keep turning it once a month. And yeah, it's just covered in. So for example, in here, I still have some potato growing entire, well, and under here, so I've put the cardboard, but I can see it's kind of disappearing. So as you can see in here, I have all this chickweed growing. So underneath, look, cardboard. Like, oh, here we go. Look at that. Look, they're all over the place. Look at them. Look, that's a healthy little bit in there. So you see, that's kind of how it looks. all these layers, and that's the manure. You see, they're happily living in there. And oh, look, here it goes. You put the plastic out. Can you see it?
Oh yes.
That's the one. So you see, because I haven't discovered it before. Look, oh, here we go. And that's bits of plastic I normally wouldn't find until months later. So now I know. I'm just gonna, you see, everywhere. See where the cardboard is being stuck together. Well, that's about pretty much it. So yeah, that's one of the other ways to do it. But I can see snails. I can see some mushrooms growing in there or something creature like that. So yeah, that's another way to do it. And also, yeah, as Dr. Naomi said, I'm using green manures when I can, like Phacelia. Also, that's a very good one because it easily saves the seeds. The seeds are quite easy to save.
Oh.
So yeah, most of the time I just try to cover everything. Even if I just leave a few docks in there, I don't mind, as long as you see grass. I try to keep it covered. That's one of the last cucumbers of this year.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that's how I hide. Oh, this is some rudbeckia, some purple sprouting broccoli. And by the way, if anyone is interested to take kale cuttings and Brussels sprouts cuttings, it seems to work. So I took some cuttings. I have a little orchard around here. So I took some Brussels sprouts cuttings. As you can see, they've been there for about, I would say, at least a month. But yeah, they're surviving. So that's another way to propagate them. So yeah, that's little cuttings of Brussels sprouts.
Brilliant.
Great. Yeah, I'm trying to do cuttings of my yacon to see if they'll work.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yacon.
I thought you might be interested.
Yes. Well, funny, we went on Monday. We go to help a school with gardening. So one of the teachers, she has allotment as well, and she said she's growing yacon. So I'll see if I can.
So she's your best friend.
No, I mean, but I think it's a very interesting crop because it gives you such a big harvest, and especially in the winter. That I think that's one of the advantages when there's not much around, I would say.
So Fiona, will you tell us a little more about your yacon, and then maybe also tell us how you manage your soils?
Well, I've got 2 yacons, and one's growing in the polytunnel and one's outside. And the one outside got a bit frosted because you want to keep them growing for as long as possible. So I've been trying, it's not completely dead, so I've been trying to cover it at night time to keep it going a bit longer because they don't start making tubers until about September. So you get a bigger crop if you cover them over.
Well, I've seen, sorry to interrupt, I see someone in Wales and they got like, the roots were huge. I mean, like 15 pounds or so. And I was like, what? I want some.
Yeah. There are online companies that you can get the tubers from.
Yeah, I tried. I haven't managed to do it last year.
I think Real Seed Catalogue, I think it's called in England.
And I think Jungle Seed as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm on the mailing list for when it's next in stock. They're going to email me, apparently.
They've suddenly become very popular. Everyone's talking about them.
It's good.
Did you manage to eat any? Is it the first season you grow them, or you have?
No, I have grown them in the past, and I like the flavour. Yeah.
How would you describe it as?
They're quite sweet. Yeah. Apparently, I think you can use them as a sweetener instead of other things. So
yeah, I think you can make a syrup.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard of that. Yeah.
Well, I haven't tried that, but maybe this year I'll have a go at it.
Hopefully, if you have a good harvest.
Anyway, what I do with my soil, I've got a friend who's got very heavy clay soil, and we put cardboard down and we went to the local horse place and we got manure which has got lots of straw and in it as well as horse poo, and that worked really, really well. She's got lovely soil now with worms, and you could hardly you couldn't get a spade in it before. It's so hard.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And over what sort of time period? Is that over a year?
No, yeah, we just did it in 1 year. It's improved her soil drastically. Yeah. So I mean, anything you can put in the soil. I mean, even weeds I put down on top of soil and then put cardboard on them, or plants in the garden. I've got a lot of ornamental grasses. I use those. I just put them down, put the cardboard down, and put any compost I've got on top. So I think just more you can feed the soil, really.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt again.
And then if you do it in the autumn time, by springtime it'll be ready to go.
So that's the time.
Maybe the bindweed, I normally take it away and put it in like water instead of just putting it.
Yes, bindweed's a bit of a problem. Or I dry it out. I lay it out when it's really hot, and then it kind of But I guess that'll have lots of nutrients in it because the roots go down so far.
Yeah, I guess it must do.
Yes.
They certainly spread a long way.
Yes, they do.
But it can also grow back from the tiniest piece. So it's definitely good to make sure it's really dead before you place it on your soil, and it will grow underneath things as well. I think one of my allotments had a real bindweed issue. Quite a lot to get on top of it.
Yes.
Teasel, would you like to tell? Oh, sorry, Fiona, carry on.
Sorry.
No.
Then I have used mixtures of green manure this year. So to try an area to cover it so that at least all my soil's covered in the winter. Yeah.
What have you used?
I can't remember what the mixture was. It was all sorts. Yeah.
Bought as a mix. Yeah.
Bought as a mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yes, I think it's a good way to get things ready and going, and especially over the autumn and winter when the soils, you see so much bare soil around, and it's really, really prone to erosion at that point. So
yes, it's a really bad idea.
So I mean,
especially when we get these because we're getting freak storms now.
Yeah.
Sorry, we get what? Sorry.
Freak storms where you get a really heavy rainfall.
Yeah, and they can really wash away a lot of.
You've got no soil left.
Or if you do have soil, it's lost a lot of the nutrients from it as well. Yeah. Teasel, would you like to tell us how you manage your soil?
I like to be quick. I just, on the allotment, we got lots of horse manure. And I haven't got the proper method. Every time I do something else, I'm still experimenting. The problem is it's fresh horse manure and always takes a while to rot down. And we have also wood chips. The tree surgeon drops off the wood chips. So I just mix it and that works well. I do non-dig as well. Basically, I don't use cardboard. I just cover with a thick layer of horse manure and then just let it rot down. And sometimes not enough. I plant something and then I cover with wood chips. I hope that it deters slugs and snails. Maybe it does.
Yes, that's a very important one.
So no, it's I've got a totally different problem. I've got 2 plots, and the plots I'm using now, the previous person took off the turf, and there was bare soil, and she covered it with black plastic, pinned it all down. Now it was neglected, and it's all overgrown, and so I've got 2 beds where I lifted the black plastic. Is sort of a work and messy, and I still have other beds where black plastic is underneath, and so yeah, that's a problem. So I basically have to lift that black plastic at one point. But
And
at the moment, things are growing over. I put basically raised beds on top of it.
Okay, so is the plastic still in entire sheets? Because I found that after a while it starts to break into small pieces, and then it's really, really difficult to get out. And I've had old carpets as well that have been buried, and then they've just turned into spaghetti, and there's all these plastic strands that you can't get out again from, you know, somebody leaving an allotment.
And also carpet gets really heavy.
Yeah, it's a sort of. Yeah.
So how are your raised beds working, Teasel?
Naya, it always takes a while for the whole to rot down, but it's doing well. And I also I like trees and shrubs, so I put them around it, and they provide a bit of shade, and they especially when it's so hot in the summer. No, so this, but I don't know. I'm not really don't know about the story, but I have to say this year I had a really good harvest, and I think it's because of the sun. I've got lots of tomatoes. The climbing beans are doing well. Potatoes did well because I think I don't use slug pellets, and because it was so dry, there weren't enough slugs and snails that were eating my little plants. So I had much more plants surviving, and
Brilliant.
I had a much better crop.
Great. Yes, it's really interesting how the weather can make a difference to our growing. And I think it's been an interesting year to run the experiment because it's been such an unusual year. So a lot of Northern Europe's been very dry, and a lot of Southern Europe had a really wet start to the, you know, a really unusually wet start to the growing period as well. So we've been kind of dealing with each other's problems, which in some cases, you know, can be a benefit. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. It's time to wrap up the call. Before I do that, I just want to say that Victoria and Alice, who sometimes joins us on these calls from James Hutton, have been writing a series of blogs about pests and dealing with different kinds of pests in your allotment. So if you want to see more about dealing with slugs and snails and pigeons and all the other kinds of critters, please take a look at our blogs online.
It's on Medium, I think. I think I've seen it.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yes, I think it was birds and something else, mammals or something.
And then there's an invertebrates one as well.
Yeah, I don't think I got to that one then.
with the slugs in, right, Victoria?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of slugs.
But recently I discovered that in the corn, the cobs itself, the wood lice are finding their way in there and they're munching inside, and I'm like, oh, hello. So yeah, I thought they're friendly foes, and now it's like, don't eat the corn.
Yeah, they are normally more of a detritivore, so they normally eat the decaying stuff rather than
No, they climbed inside the sweet corn, so it must have been nice. I mean, it was very nice. The ones we had, it was pretty good. So looking forward to grow it again next year.
Brilliant, well done.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm jealous. I managed to get it to grow once and never again. Anyway, I'm afraid it's time for us to wrap up. So I want to say a big thanks to Victoria for taking us through the soil texture, and a big thanks to everyone for joining in. It's been really great, and I've enjoyed it. So, a little chance.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon in the next year.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Good day. Bye.
Bye.